I do feel it's also important to address one more time the crisis at the border and the variety of bad things happening because of that crisis, and not caring like we did only a few months ago as to who crosses the border. I don't think we've spent enough time addressing the drug crisis in America. It has been around so long it becomes boring even to think about it, except recently we hit the point at which 90,000 Americans had died of drug overdoses in a 12-month period. When I talk to people at the border or my local drug enforcement administration, they both agree that this is in part happening because more drugs are coming across the border, and in part it is predictable that more drugs are coming across the border because it is easier to get across the border, more people are crossing the border, but even more so, as marijuana becomes legalized in the country, it is no longer profitable to bring marijuana across the southern border. I heard an anecdote of a significant amount of marijuana coming across the border, and the people who owned it couldn't sell it because the marijuana produced by the now legalized agriculture operations in the United States, not surprisingly, because we do genetic engineering, that sort of thing, the marijuana produced in the United States in states like Colorado and Washington is superior to the marijuana brought across the Mexican border. Well, if the Mexican drug cartels cannot make money selling marijuana or bringing marijuana across the border, how are they going to make it up? They're going to make it up by bringing more and more dangerous drugs, meth, cocaine, heroin, but above all, fentanyl. They're going to bring more and more fentanyl across the southern border, and now we have 90,000 deaths in this country in 1 year. A little bit of my district touches Milwaukee County. Not a huge county by nationwide standards, about 1 million people. Last year, 540 people died of drug overdoses in Milwaukee County. There were about 200 murders, which is the all-time record, and everybody couldn't believe 200 murders. There were over 500 illegal drug overdoses. Now, what do we do about that? Well, clearly one of the things we have to do is we have to prevent these drugs from coming in the country in the first place. And it is disappointing that we put the security of the border, we put it on the back burner and think of excuses not to deal with it. But in addition to thinking of all the people running across the border, take a minute to think about the 90,000 people, 90,000 people, many very young people, dying primarily of fentanyl but other illegal drug overdoses, and ask yourself, what is this body going to do to stop it? Of course, other problems at the border, we've gone from having or checking in or touching about 17,000 people a month to 180,000 people a month. As far as gotaways, people that aren't even checked in, our Border Patrol estimates we've gone from about 6,000 this time last year to about 30,000 now. Just massive increases. And I would guess between gotaways and people who are checked into the country, you're looking at 60 or 70,000 a month instead of under 10,000 a month this time last year. It is truly a crisis, and quite frankly, this body ought to be doing nothing else but dealing with that crisis until it's solved. And the fact that we had under 10,000 people crossing the border only 4 or 5 months ago show it's not something we don't know how to solve or it's impossible to solve. It's we are willingly allowing a massive increase across the border. Of course, that massive increase, since the drug cartels charge people to come here, also increases the power of those drug cartels, both in the United States and this country. It, to a degree, results in separation of children from their families as unaccompanied children come here, as well as a given number of children are probably rented by people to come here because they know supposed intact families have a better chance of being allowed in this country than single people who are still frequently turned around.